Maybe you were sitting in your car, in the parking lot of a job you'd been quietly hating for 2 years. Maybe you were at your kitchen table, with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, because you'd been refreshing your email every 4 minutes. And then it came through. The offer, the number, and the number was bigger than anything you'd ever seen with your name attached to it. You did the math in your head immediately. You couldn't help it. You divided by 12. You thought about the credit card balance you'd been carrying since November. You thought about the apartment you'd been pretending not to want. You thought, finally. And then, about 6 months later, something strange happened. You looked at your bank account and felt almost exactly the same way you used to. Not broke, technically, just not free. Not the way you thought you'd feel. The fear had changed addresses, but it hadn't left. Here's what nobody tells you about a major income jump. It doesn't do what you think it's going to do. And if you don't know exactly what it actually does, you will spend every dollar of it chasing a feeling it was never designed to give you. My name is Julian, and I spend an embarrassing amount of time thinking about why money behaves so differently in people's lives than anyone expects. Today we're going into the one financial event most people get completely wrong. The big jump, the $50,000 raise, the new job, the promotion that finally moves the decimal point. What it actually changes, what it silently destroys if you let it, and the one move that separates the people who use a jump to get permanently free from the people who spend it and end up right back where they started. Hit subscribe before we go any further, because the last section of this video is the part the entire finance industry hopes you never figure out. And I promise you, it's not what you expect. But first, let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus isn't real, but you've met him. Maybe you went to school with him. Maybe you see him at family dinners. Maybe, if you're being honest this morning, he's been living in your mirror for the last few years. 3 years ago, Marcus made $68,000 a year at a mid-sized company, doing work he was genuinely good at, but deeply underpaid for. He drove a 7-year-old Civic with 94,000 miles on it. He packed lunch for days a week. He knew his checking account balance at any given moment down to the nearest $20, not because he was disciplined, but because the number was always close enough to zero that it required monitoring. His brain was busy, not busy in the way his boss meant when he said Marcus was always on top of things. Busy in a different way. A quieter, more exhausting way. The kind of busy that comes from running a permanent background program called, "Can I actually afford this?" running silently underneath every single decision of every single day. Then Marcus got the jump. A recruiter had been circling for months. He finally said yes, went through 4 rounds of interviews, and landed at $118,000. $50,000 more per year than anything he'd ever earned. He thought his life was about to change completely. He was right. He just had no idea how. The first change wasn't the apartment. It wasn't the car. It wasn't even the vacations he'd been putting off for 3 years. The first change was the silence. About 8 weeks into the new job, Marcus was standing in line at a coffee shop, and he ordered the coffee he wanted, not the coffee he could justify. And he didn't feel anything. No quick internal calculation. No mild guilt. Just a coffee. And he stood there for a second, slightly confused by the absence of the feeling he'd always had there before. That background program, the one that had been running his whole adult life, had just quietly switched off. Researchers who study financial psychology have a name for what Marcus had been experiencing. They call it the scarcity tax. When you are operating